Welcome back to the C# tutorial. So today we'll be doing different types of loops, so let's get started. So I have no clever application I can implement this in, so I'm just going to show you the different types of loops and how you would implement them in C#. So there's 4 types. You've got a for loop, a for each loop, a while loop, and a do while loop, and they all handle loops differently. So let's start with a for loop, a standard for loop. If I just do this as a void, let's just do our standard loop. We've done this a lot during the project. So it's just a for. We declare an inline variable int x equals 0. Then we say x is going to be less than a number. Let's just do 100. And then we do x plus plus, so we increment it by 1. Now you don't have to do it like that. So in here it's just do something. Now you don't have to do it like that. You could start x at 5, for instance, and then you could have it x is bigger than 100, and each time you could minus x by 1. So x minus equals 1 is equivalent to x equals x minus 1. So they're equivalent code. So that's our standard for loop. Then we have a for each loop. For each is good for iterating through values of a list or an array. So what we can do is we can go for each. So what we have is we have a for each, and within here we put the data type of the structure we're using. So our list up here, if I scroll up, our list that we declared was a string. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to go string element in our in list, and then do something. So this is good if you're looping through, let's say you're looping through these lines and you don't need to know the index of the line. So this is good if you don't need to know the index. If you did need the index from that, then all you have to do is int index equals 0, and then at the end here just go index plus plus. So this means it increments the index after you loop each time. So each element increments the index by 1. Next, we have a while loop. So let's just separate these out so they look a bit nicer. There we are. So we have a while loop. So this would require an index. So let's use the same index we put up here. Let's just call this index 2 so the code doesn't get confused. So we can go while index 2 is less than 5. So you have some form of condition in here. Just make sure the condition does change eventually. We can go do something and index 2 plus plus. So this is basically the same as doing this. Yeah, so this is basically the same as doing this. So integer, our index starts at 0, we increment it each time, and it's less than 5. That's exactly the same. While loops can run between 0 and infinite times. So if this starts out at 6, it's never going to run this. So next up, we've got a do while loop. So let's create a new index, integer index 3. So this is a do. So we do something in here. So again, let's just do something, and then index 3 plus plus. After that do code, we do while index 3 is less than 5. So the difference between a while loop and a do while loop is that the condition here is read after, while the condition here is read before. So if we make them both start at 6, this condition is always false, meaning that this never gets incremented. While this one, it will run everything within this code and then realize that, hey, it shouldn't run again. So this will actually output at 7. So if we show all of these in practice, within our first one, let's do messagebox.show, and we will output our x value to a string. And let's just put the loop. I'm just going to put the loop after everything is ran with the. So if I press this button, so our for statement here says x from 0 to 5. So we should get 0 to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because it will never output 5, because 5 is not smaller than 5, so it will only output 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our for loop. Let's do our for each here. You see here, we're going to do index. Now this shouldn't actually run because there's no indexes. There is actually no indexes in list, so that won't be able to run. But this would output the amount of indexes that are in that list. So while it's less than 5, index starts at 0, we increment it by 1, and then show the message box. So we should get 5 values, because as this increments, that while loop will still finish until it loops back to the start. So it doesn't just cut it off in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it stops it. But if it's 6, but if the index starts at 6, you'll see nothing happens, because it can't run. Can't run at all. So let's try this one. So we increment the index, and then we show the message box. So again, this should show 1 to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exactly the same. But if we set our index to 6, you'll see it prints out 7 and then stops. So that's the difference between a while and a do while. So this one runs the code and then looks at the condition, while this one looks at the condition, then runs the code. So finally, within these loops, we can look at breaking and continuing. So you'll see we've used break here. So break will exit the loop completely. So you see we're within a loop here, and we just exit the loop because a condition is true. However, if we change this to continue, the current index will be skipped, so the current index will go back to the start, but it will still increment and do the rest of the indexes. So in terms of how it works, let's say you have 3 indexes that you need to loop through. If we do break and we break it on this first one, then these 2 do not get run. If we put continue on this first one, then number 1 will stop working, so number 1 will not execute, but number 2 and number 3 will continue to execute as if everything's okay. Which means that if we put continue on line 2 and break on line 2, then number 3 won't run on break, continue will still run number 3, but number 2 will obviously not finish running. So that's a basic overview of loops, so tune in for the next video where we do debugging.